Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today on the Skincarma Pod, I'm excited to welcome my friend Deanna Kangas, a true beauty trailblazer. Over the course of her career, Deanna has founded, nurtured, and driven the growth of several legacy consumer brands. I'm talking high visibility brands, cultural touchpoints, including Mattel, Ouai Haircare, and Stila Cosmetics. Deanna and I met maybe 15 years ago or so and have worked together on several projects, including the launch of Florence by Mills. She's one of the wisest and most interesting and inspiring people I know. Deanna's the mom of two boys and a big cheerleader for women. She's actively involved in mentoring initiatives, including her work with Girl Starter, where she helped to empower the next generation of female business leaders. She's currently partnering with schools to help girls get internships. I told you she's inspiring. I'm super excited to speak with Deanna and to have her share some of her wisdom with you. Let's talk to Deanna. Deanna, hi.
Hi, Carmine. How are you?
I'm good. I think you're probably better than I am because where are you right now?
I'm in Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica, in the jungle.
Costa Rica. I can't. I love Costa Rica. I think you know I've been, right? We talked
Yes,
about that.
yes.
North of San Jose, there's this old coffee plantation. And now I can't for the life of me remember it. It sounds like Xanadu. It looks like Xanadu, like the word, but it's Zundari.
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 Yeah.
I love Costa Rica. Why is Costa Rica so magical?
It is so magical because the people love their communities everywhere
Mm-hmm.
you go. They might leave, but they always come back. They prioritize education. Their literacy rate is like 85%. Plus, they
Wow.
Guatemala and other cities. They're fantastic. When I went to the San Jose Marriott Bonvoy, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember one of those hotels. You
Yeah.
go in and they have water bottles in glass. So if Marriott Bonvoy can figure it out in Costa Rica, why can't we do that all across the world, right?
For sure. Well, we should be clear too. You're not just visiting Costa Rica.
Right. We have a house here and we're
Yes.
residents of Costa Rica.
You're residents of Costa Rica.
Yes.
We talked about. I've toyed with the idea of moving out of the country to Mexico or Portugal. I don't know how I would get the cat to either of those places, but we've talked about how you get health insurance out of the country, stuff like that. And you seem to have pulled it off. How long have you been down there?
We actually bought here in 2021, but my husband
Wow.
got citizenship of Spain and has a UK passport.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's so cool. I'm so jealous.
It's just good to have one. I love having a global perspective. And I think in the cosmetic industry, Carmine, we always went to Europe or Asia. I never
Yeah,
went to Central or South America. I haven't been to Argentina yet, or Peru, or
right.
Brazil.
That's so true. Always traveling to Asia, always going to Italy,
Yes.
France. I remember when I don't think I was at L'Oreal at Kiehl's for even 6 months the first time I had to fly to Paris and present
Yeah.
to the French. Like, yeah, totally. It's so bizarre.
I had to learn French. That's how much I was going to France because all the glass bottles in the fragrance industry, all our packaging was from Europe.
That's so funny. Well, wait, we've jumped ahead. You're in Costa Rica now, but where did you start out? South Dakota?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
originally from Mitchell, South Dakota, which probably had
Okay.
about 12,000 people.
Okay. My town had 25,000 growing up in Connecticut. I get it. Yeah.
So, I was born and raised in that fashion capital of the world, Mitchell, South Dakota. And we didn't have the internet back then. So
Yeah.
we weren't exposed to, kids are so lucky now. They're exposed to everything all around the world, no matter where they live, which gives you an advantage because, as you know, being from a small town, there's just certain things you don't know.
Yeah.
So, speaking of taking advantage of opportunities, I was only 17. So, my father made me go in state to college.
Hmm.
And when I got to college, of course, we had a really great dorm. I started Women Supporting Women way back in college. But she
Hmm.
said she just came back from New York City. And I said, how did you get to New York City? Because imagine not being connected to the world. New York City seems like so
Right.
scary, so far away, right?
Yeah.
Because if you
Yeah.
watch the news, you only see the scary stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, she said, oh, I was, it's called a nanny. And I said, how did you get that? She said, well, right next to all the colleges do it. It was a good thing to do to have college kids because all these people needed childcare and to have an
Mm.
educated, especially people from the Midwest or the South, they just tended to trust them more to be in
Hmm.
their home and take care of their kids. So
Hmm.
you went and it was all done through the college and I checked New York and I got Tuxedo Park, New York, which is a very wealthy area where they created the tuxedo.
Okay.
But when I came home from right before leaving to New York, we went and saw our home economics teacher. And this is where you and I bond. It just takes one teacher, right?
Yeah.
And she said to me, and she led home economics, but she was flying to Washington D.C. and doing women's rights, and this is a million years ago, right? And she said, Deanna, you're going to love the Fashion Institute of Technology. You need to go see the museum. So here's this woman. And Carmine, I did high school in a town called Wessington Springs. There's 1,200 people there. So to have a teacher that, women supporting women that taught
Yeah.
us that in class and had been to New York City and knew FIT, what are the chances, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, of course, whatever Mrs. Schur tells us to do, my first week, I went and checked out FIT and I randomly ran into a professor that said, oh, you should come. I said, what do you mean? It's June and, school starts in September. He said, you can do the night program. I teach it classes on the weekend at night. Just sign up and at the same time apply full time for, the next semester and you'll get in.
Oh
And
my God.
and so I did. I called my mom in August and said, can you send my winter clothes? I'm not coming home.
That's so awesome.
And that
We,
that made my career, right? Can you imagine if I would have
yeah.
stayed and went to school in, Iowa or Minnesota and
Yeah.
accepted to Colorado?
Right.
It
So there you were in New York City.
and it was
At how old?
I was
20?
I was 18
18 in New York City.
in New York
Wow.
City.
That is wild.
And I was so lucky. If I tell you all the stories of people who took care of me and watched my back, it was unbelievable. One of
That's
the
amazing.
guys that I worked with said, Deanna, you have a little angel on your shoulder because there's no way that you're getting through all of this because New York was really dangerous back then.
Oh my God, for sure. I
And
mean, I used to come down to the city. I grew up in Connecticut,
yeah,
and my mother used to bring me down to the city just like she always did when she was growing up. And then, she would come down with her sisters. And I remember being like 7 years old, maybe 8 years old, and walking through Times Square with her. And Times Square wasn't the paradise it is now. It
no,
was very seedy. There were prostitutes. Like, I mean, same with me. I came from this little tiny town. I had no exposure to anything. And now I'm walking through Times Square at 7 years old and seeing prostitutes. And like, I remember this one woman she was like in a blue fur coat or something. And the sex shops at my age. And I used to get so like, I was so mesmerized by all of the craziness that I would lose track of my mother. And it would just be the two of us walking down the sidewalk in Times Square. And I would just move to the other side of her to get a closer look at something else. And she would freak out thinking that she had lost me.
right.
But yeah,
And the park was so dangerous. You couldn't
yeah,
walk through
yeah,
Central Park,
yeah,
not even
yeah,
10 o'clock on a Sunday.
right. So you're at FIT,
Uh-huh.
right? And what was that experience like?
Well, luckily I had I met a great friend. We called her the princess from Trinidad, Vashti. And, just some beautiful, wonderful people. New York, they're not as friendly as California, but they're
Mhm.
real. So when
Yeah.
they're your friend and when the teacher, I had great teachers there. And they were so excited, like, you're from South Dakota? I don't know if we've ever met anybody from South Dakota.
You're the only person I've ever met from South Dakota.
Well, everybody says that. Well, there's only 900,000 in
What are the odds? Yes. Okay, so you're FIT, and so you finish up work, you graduate from FIT.
Well, actually, no, we drove across country and I went to Long Beach State University because back then, if you had a fashion degree, I couldn't go into marketing for IBM or, name a big company. It was very centralized back then.
Yeah, for sure.
So drove across country. Got a job at my college in potpourri. Remember potpourri back in the day? They used
potpourri?
Yeah.
Like the stuff the smelly twigs?
Yes, flowers. It was
bags of twigs and flowers.
Nordstrom's had a big section with crap.
I was a cosmetic department manager. I had potpourri, especially in the holidays, and it's sold.
Exactly.
Oh my God. It's probably so full of allergens.
Oh my God. Can you imagine I worked in that? But she's my friend now, but she drove by Huntington Beach, California, and popped in, and I just happened to be the person she bumped into, and she said, "Oh, I work at Fendi." I said, "Oh, I love Fendi. What can I do for you?" She said, "I want to see if you can make potpourri for me so I could do it at the counter." Because remember back at the day, having special events is how you got people's interest. So we made a special potpourri for her with Fendi. I don't even think I charged her. I just said, "Come back. I'll help you." And we put it in bags, and she put it in little tiny bags, tied it with a ribbon. And it was so successful. We kept doing that. So then the president at the time said, "Well, why don't you reach out to other cosmetic companies?" So I was doing that, and I was like, I would rather work in the cosmetic industry. So I sent my resume to Bijan Fragrances, and this wonderful woman who's my mentor, Sandra Love, hired me. So by 23, I was, marketing for Bijan, which is
in LA, right?
In LA.
They were in Beverly Hills, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. In Beverly Hills. Yeah. Giorgio, Bijan, we were all on Beverly Hills.
Yep.
And it was all about those high-end fragrances.
That is so wild. We were totally in that. I mean, I remember Bijan was my number one fragrance when I was the cosmetics manager at Bullock's in Century City.
Yeah.
Where I met Andrew, by the way, your business partner and longtime friend. Yeah.
And he was doing Safari
totally.
by Ralph Lauren, because we used to go into the stores in New York and they would say, "Oh, you can't." Remember, we had the eggs and all the things that went with the Bijan setup. They said, "You can't put all that on the counter." And I would point to Safari with the jewelry and the lace, the jewelry box, and they
all of Andrew's setups.
And they would say, "Oh, but that's Andrew Knox." And I'm like,
Andrew Knox can do anything to promote product. Yeah, he got away with a lot there.
A lot. That's how life works, right? I was like, I need to meet this Andrew Knox.
Yeah.
And then 20 years later, we're business partners.
That's so incredible.
I'm like, I need to know him, and someday I'm going to work with him.
See, you put it on your vision board.
I put it on
my
vision board.
Fast forward to Mattel. How did that happen? And I'm assuming that was in New York.
No, Mattel is in El Segundo.
Okay.
Corporate headquarters. And after we sold Gloss, we started that internet company, gloss.com. And we had a whole editorial team and our retail team. And actually the .com that was going to win, and Jupiter had us as the #1 beauty website in 2000 over eve.com, beauty.com, all of them. And you know why? Because our business team, our beauty team, and our engineers all got along and worked together.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk a little bit more about how brands develop and how brands the life cycle of a brand.
Yeah.
That is just so fascinating to me. And so you sold gloss.com
We sold
to,
Gloss in March of 2000 before the crash
okay,
in May.
I remember gloss.com.
Yeah, Andrew worked with us. A friend of
Mm-hmm.
ours, Dan Murphy, worked with us.
Got it.
We had just an amazing team. Another example I really preach about for brands to be successful, it's all about the team. And I am
Mm-hmm.
so happy to hire people smarter than me because that's how you're going to be successful.
For sure.
Sandra Love, again, my mentor, used to have a coat rack at the door, and that was for all of us to check our ego because she said there's I in team. And
Check your ego at the door.
check your ego. Yeah, and put a coat rack just in case we couldn't remember. So we sold that. Lauder sold a minority to Chanel and Clarence. So I reported
Okay.
to 3 CEOs of 3 competing companies doing marketing, which is all they believe they're the expert. So it was
Yes.
a fascinating experience, not something you probably want to do long term. But to get out of my non-compete, because back on the East Coast, they could do non-competes.
Right.
I went because Adrienne Fontanella was head of the girls division. She used to be in the cosmetic industry. She knew, and she had a saying. She said, a little girl needs another Barbie doll, just like a woman needs another lipstick. Same marketing, just different age group. So she
Yeah.
loved hiring people from the cosmetic industry. Because Carmine, we know branding. When they
Yeah,
tried
for
to
sure.
send out my Barbie collector dolls to these editors, I'm like, oh, you didn't include tissue and a note card? And you didn't spray the tissue with fragrance? Oh my God. And they thought I was a nutcase.
At least you didn't include potpourri.
No, I would have found it. Yeah, and Richard Dixon was there. He ran all of licensing. We brought a lot.
So wait, what were you doing? What were you doing at Mattel?
I was general manager of the collector division because
Okay.
said that collector division was declining and they kept bringing it up at all of her quarterly meetings, even though it was like 10%. Barbie was almost $1 billion business back then.
Oh God, what is it now?
I would have to look that up. I know
Insane.
with Richard doing the Barbie movie, it really
Yeah.
it has increased.
Did you have any inkling whatsoever that that brand would have the kind of longevity that it's had?
Well, if you study it,
Yeah.
this is why it was so fascinating to be part of Barbie Collector and to go back to the roots, which is exactly what Richard did when he became president, went back to the roots. Because this is a brand that, one, it was created in, I believe, in 1960 or 1958. And she actually did couture fashion. America didn't even know about couture fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all the designers, like even Armani, he designed the hair. He loved doing his Barbie for us. Giorgio Armani.
That's
Like,
wild.
yeah, I got to work with people like that. And he said, that's how a lot of us, that's who we designed for. As kids, that's how they learned design, was to do designs and make clothes for their Barbies.
Oh my God.
And story after story after story like that with all of these fashion designers. Donna Karan did one. I know we all love Donna Karan.
Yeah.
Kate Spade, like I could just go on and on of all these amazing. You remember Cher's designer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mackey?
Yeah.
Bob Mackey did the most amazing Cher over the top designer dolls. So what Adrienne wanted me to do and what I had to do is I had to come in and recreate a brand, right? So we did it kind of like American Express inspiration. We had platinum, gold, silver, and pink. We called it pink instead of green. And so when you went to Walmart and bought your collector doll that was $20, you flipped over the back and you saw the 4 levels. So you were part of something really fabulous because the platinum dolls were the one of a kind. It could go for $25, $50, $100,000. And even the gold, that was Robert Best. He did all these amazing fashion dolls. And then we did silver because we were at Toys R Us and the Toys Company. And those were a lot of,
Toys R Us. Oh my
yeah, can you
God.
imagine? But there were
Yeah.
partnerships with a lot of movies. We did the Lucy dolls. We did, I don't know, name a, current culture, whatever that was, we did a doll for it.
Right.
So
Right.
we had the 4 levels. We made it so they couldn't sell it at the toy store at a discount. We numbered our high-end Barbie doll. Like, we put so many things into place, and we
Yeah.
actually turned the tide. We actually started increasing our sales. So much so that when Barbie started declining, because political, they made the boys president of the girls and boys division, which boys and girls, I'm just telling you, the marketing is different. It just is. He went in to the head of Walmart and said, "Oh, just move the collector dolls. We'll put this and this there." And my buyer said, "I'm not moving collector." She said, "You think it's that bad that Barbie's down 15%? With if you wouldn't have my collector business, it would be down 25."
Right.
And you know why? It's because I flew there with my team. I didn't make Walmart come to us. We went to them and met with her, and we did a birthstone Barbie. Imagine. And we did it exclusively for Walmart. I mean, there's 1,500 stores, but it
Right.
was an exclusive, which is such a cosmetic thing to do, right?
Totally. Yes.
And it kept selling out. It brought her whole business back. She loved it.
That is amazing. I mean, Mattel, Barbie, like when I think about branding and brands that thrive for so long, spanning generations.
Yeah.
There's just there aren't many that have such cultural relevance,
Right.
particularly in that sphere. Like if I think about Mattel as a business, sure, there's the toy manufacturing piece of it, but there's entertainment and then the licensing.
Yeah.
And I'm just so fascinated by that business. But I like let's talk a little bit about branding.
Yes.
What's the secret sauce? Like how does a brand take off? You're in partnership with Andrew now at New Theory Ventures, and you incubate brands, predominantly beauty, right?
Yeah. Well, now we have it under strategic growth, our own consulting company. And
Mm-hmm.
we partner with brands. And I'll give you an example. Andrew and I were approached by Dr. Lamise, who's a fabulous, she's another one to add to your list to put on your podcast. She's from the Middle East, but she did Shifa, a clean beauty brand, like way before, Carmine, you and I were probably talking about clean, but way before it was mainstream.
Yeah.
Amazing products. The way she eats and everything is just so clean and health, wellness driven. But she came to us and said she had this amazing hairstylist, and she wanted to create a brand, her and Jen Atkin. And it was called Ouai. And Andrew and I came in, and this is, again, check your ego at the door. It takes all of us. Jen is amazing spokesperson. She's amazing hairstylist. She knows about hair and what to do. And what she wanted to do is, because think about this, this was only back in 2016. It launched 2016 to 17. There wasn't a lot of videos on how to do your hair. There was a ton about makeup. And she said, I want to create a product where, I could do beach waves, and I can show you how to get that look with a few clips and a blow dryer. And you can look great to go to a meeting because you don't always have time to go to, get your hair styled. And she said, I want to give them tips and tricks and great products to do their hair themselves, which was so ahead of its time because everybody went to their stylist.
Yeah.
So they approached Andrew and I. And so Andrew and I were co-presidents. We, hired the
At Ouai.
At Ouai. Yep.
Yeah.
And Jen, it freed Jen up to do, she's a marketing genius, to do her thing. Dr. Lamise, the education, the financial, there was, the pairing of all of us together. And I kind of mentioned to you, Sephora said to Andrew, do you think a social media driven brand can make it? Because there wasn't a
This
lot.
was when? This was 10 years
2000,
ago?
yeah, 2016.
Yeah, yeah. A
Um,
social media driven brand, imagine.
yeah, imagine, but that's not
Yeah.
that long ago. If you,
It's not. It just shows you how fast the business changes, and we both know how dynamic beauty is.
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, and it's affected by everything.
And to your point, Andrew and I, because we're aware of the trends, Carmine, like you, we saw that hair care was finally moving into retail.
Right.
Remember, it was only sold at the salons, and there was
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah.
channel conflict.
hmm
So we knew there was going to be opportunity in hair. And so to take on a brand like that, because as you know, people that do skincare and cosmetics, we didn't have as much hair experience because that was
Yeah.
all run through the salons.
Yeah. I feel like anytime I've worked on hair, it was, accidental.
Yes.
And, coming from, I don't have experience with products for hair because I shave my head.
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, I don't even use shampoo. I just use my facial cleanser.
right,
If it's
right,
good enough for my face, it's certainly good enough for my scalp.
right, right.
And so,
Way
but,
even better.
but it's the hair category is so fascinating to me. People are so attached to their hair and, it's like a daily ritual.
Yeah. And Lamise used to call it, just like you said, it needs to work on your scalp is like your face, and you
Yeah.
need to pay attention to your scalp. So we had scalp products right from the beginning.
Yeah,
We-
when I was at Kiehl's, we used to say, Kiehl's always had hair products.
yeah,
And we used to say that the scalp was an extension of your face.
exactly. And that really came to life with social media and
hmm
for Jen to talk about these things and, really drove awareness, as you said, about hair and what we need to do to take care of our hair.
Right. So teamwork, bringing the right people together at the right time. Obviously, timing
Yeah,
is an essential element of that, right? Like
exactly.
it was the perfect time for, like, Sephora characterized a social media brand.
Exactly.
Hair was ripe for explosion, and you identified all of this, and you bring the team together, and you have Jen, who's an expert in hair, and it just takes off. And a brand like Way is still doing phenomenally well,
Right.
even though you're not involved with it anymore. But that's not that's probably just as common as a brand that just goes by the wayside. And I'm so fascinated with how brands are birthed and how brands die. And go ahead, I would love to know your viewpoint
Most
on that.
brands falter in the first year.
hmm
89%
hmm
go out of business. And my mentor again used to say, a good idea is just a good idea unless you can execute. So the combination, and as I said, no ego. Andrew and I get in there, and if we have to empty the trash and or speak to the president of the United States and anything in between, that's what we
hmm
do. And that's what it takes. It takes that first year. It takes, hire quick, but fire faster, or whatever that saying is.
Is that a saying?
Yes. Because if you bring in the wrong person, you just gotta, move them right back out because you will
Right.
make mistakes. And I think
Yeah.
mine, who was a great mentor back in '96. I'm aging myself. We did the Michael Jordan cologne,
hmm
and it was launched, and it was one of the best selling men's fragrance ever. And there's lots of reasons, but for that brand, we sold into sporting goods stores and department stores, and people thought we were crazy back then, right?
Yeah.
And so I said to my mentor, I said, I cannot tell these sporting good guys this is the top note and then the middle note and this is the dry down.
At Dave's Sporting Goods.
Jams at Foot Locker. They look at me like, What did she just even say? I'm never going to be able to repeat that.
Yeah.
But what we did is we developed a course based on Michael's personality. For
Hmm.
example, rare air, because nobody is in the air doing a layup like he is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So all the guys could remember that. We had North Carolina woods, but the leather note, Michael wanted that to be a baseball mitt, not a basketball, because he said, I can accept failure, but I can't accept not trying. And I think that is such a brilliant quote. And I
Hmm.
wish they would teach that in our middle schools and high schools, because I think, Carmine, what me, you, and Andrew, we've seen things work and fall apart, but you just get back on the horse and you keep going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you learn, what did you not do right? And
Right.
Andrew and I have run brands, so we've seen what has not worked. And when we're on a path, we know, okay, this is not getting the traction, the sales that we thought it was going to do. We need to pivot.
Hmm.
And you need to be, it's like the first 90 days. When you're launching a brand, every 90 days, you need to be reevaluating,
Gut checking.
gut checking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's such a fascinating business that we're in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah, go ahead.
some of it's luck, because with the PR, as you know, social media can drive something to the top. Now we have TikTok
Yeah.
that is feeding brands, but you need that repeat customer. So the product has to be amazing. I'm a firm believer in the product has to work, it has to perform, it has to have a point of difference. You have to believe it, you have to preach it, you have to live
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It has to be unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to end, and I think what's probably the most interesting, intriguing, and inspiring thing of all, and is your work with young girls and your mentorship of young girls. And I know you said we've joked about it, or you've joked about it, that you have two sons, but
Yeah.
you see yourself as a mentor to girls, and the irony of that is not lost on you.
Yeah. Um, I will share with you, since my mentor, Sandra Love, and I worked with her when I was 23, and
Hmm.
she used to say, I'm going to share my mistakes. Again, mistakes. We don't win all the time. Why do we teach our young girls you got to get straight A's and you got to be best in the sport and you have to be best creatively? No, this is when you should be experiencing things, trying things, because how do you know what you love? How do you know you want to be an engineer at 13? You haven't had any classes, any experience.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
forcing them to choose and pick. And I think that's why there's a lot of frustration, right? So my mentor said, I'm going to share my mistakes, because why should you have to go through it? I did it for you. And it
Hmm.
doesn't work because of this reason. She
Hmm.
used to say, don't come to me with a problem unless you have 3 recommendations of what to do. Isn't that a simple thing that we could teach everybody?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I was so women supporter, all the women on Gloss I still keep in touch with. They can call me. That's been since 2000. I can
Yeah.
still be a reference for them. That's how much I love them and know their strengths, and I know how to position it with the people. Well, the universe decided that I needed to see the other side, because I'm a big believer in debate. And in a debate competition, you don't know before you go on stage, 15 minutes before you go on stage, what side you're going to be on.
Right.
So you have to understand both sides to every issue and be able to talk about it. And I think the real understanding, and I think we would have a lot less controversy in the world if people practice that. So the universe decided that I need to have 2 boys, because I needed to see what happens on the other side. And it was so eye opening for me.
Was it?
Oh my God. Yeah. Because I saw what they went through and I thought, we need to work together. And I think that's why I'm so positive about Andrew, because if you see a partner like that, and for us to
Hmm.
go into business, And, Sephora always laughs because we don't even have to say anything anymore. They ask a question and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that. They ask another, Andrew takes that. We just work. And I think that's some of the reason it takes both sides. So these young girls, I just got introduced to the USC Cosmetic Club in the business program.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm helping some of these young girls get internships and, what to do about their first time job or get exposure, their CEW locally. There's, in the Beauty Industry West, there's so many things that they could volunteer at to actually meet people. Because I think meeting people and having people help you and be your champion is so important.
Yeah.
Well, I got to talk about you to these women at Neiman Marcus that representing the skincare brand. And they said, how do you do your research? I said, well, it's called Carmine GPT. And I just send out, this is the question, this is the age demographic.
And you get a diatribe back, just like ChatGPT. You get an honest answer. You can trust the answer coming back from me.
Honest answer, and you get product recommendations.
It comes with product recommendations. That's so true.
Chat. I have a personal one.
You don't. You have Carm GPT. Deanna, thank you. This is incredible. I'm so jealous that you're in Costa Rica. I wish I were in Costa Rica with you.
Well,
I appreciate you taking the time because I know how much you'd rather be out there with the monkeys.
Well, Carmine, thank you. I think what you do and your honesty and integrity, demystifying your integrity, because to be able to say honest answers, sometimes they're not always positive. And I think that's what makes you stand out in the crowd because we need to hear both sides.
Thank you, Deanna. I appreciate that. Ciao.
Bye.
Aw, I love Deanna. That was such a cool conversation. We could have just kept going and going and going and going. She's such a true, brand guru. She's just one of the most spiritual and, again, wise people I know. I love talking to Deanna. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for listening to the Skincarma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skincarma blog at skincarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.